Welcome everybody, Rob Brown here. This is the 20th, believe it or not, in a series of panel discussions we're doing with leaders of global accounting networks, alliances, associations. And I am very privileged to have an esteemed panel with us today. One or two people coming back, Brian and Reese, which means you've done something right before. So congratulations on that. Lovely to have Laura and Fergal with us. I'm going to get everyone to introduce themselves in just a moment, but let's just pause for a moment and consider where we are. We are in crazy times right now. We're bang in the middle of a pandemic. The accounting profession have been described as the emergency services for businesses because they are standing in that gap, trying to keep the economy and the growth going. And we're talking to people today who serve those accounting firms. These are the leaders of membership associations, alliances, networks, whatever you want to call that. But these firms are pressing into these leaders of leaders right now. And we're just going to get their insights on how they feel the profession is coping, where the opportunities are, and how they are serving their members. So welcome one and all. Brian, can I just ask you to kick off, do a little introduction, and then we'll go around the room.
Sure. Thank you, Rob. I appreciate you having me. My name is Brian Hunter. I'm the global chair of Integra International. The organization is located in London. We have 136 member firms serving 5,500 professionals located in over 70 countries. I'm serving a two-year term as a global chair. In addition to my role as chair at Integra, I'm also the managing partner of a 35-person CPA firm, Fenner, Melstrom, and Dooling, located in Metro Detroit. So I wear a couple hats, not only at the association, but with taking care of clients and so forth throughout this. And happy to be a part of the panel, Rob. Thank you.
Super to have you with us, Brian. Reese, can I come to you next? You're certainly looking smart today. You have got the tie, even though it's Friday afternoon here in the UK.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Rob. My name is Reese Maddock. I'm the CEO of UHY International. UHY is a network of audit, accounting, and tax professionals. We're in about 101 countries now, just over the 100 mark, and we have about 8,500 professionals ranging across all of those countries. So really looking forward to the conversation today, and great to see you all.
Thank you. And you make a good point early on, Reese. This is a time to share. And I've been so impressed with how leaders like yourselves that are very busy, you're pulled in so many different directions, and you're not just being commercial leaders to the organizations you represent, but I'm sure you are therapists, you are counselors, you are all kinds of things right now, right around the clock. So it's great that you're all willing to spare a little bit of time to come on something like this. Lara Joseph from Millennial, it is great to have you with us. A little introduction, please.
Thank you, Rob. Lara Joseph with Alineo Global, been introduced. I'm the Vice President of International Relations here at Alineo Global. For many of you that probably know, Alineo Global is the second largest association in the world. We have 236 members across 85 countries. We serve about 28,000 plus professionals. We were members of PKF about 5 years ago, and then we did a leap of faith and broke out to be our own organization. And since then, we've had a lot of growth. I work directly with the CEO and our regional directors across the world to make sure we have the proper tools and resources. We're building out from the ground up on all of those resources across the world. It's been a challenge figuring out not everything fits all. I'm responsible for the global strategy build out. We have different regions, different directors across the world. So like Brian, I do wear a lot of different hats and always putting out some fires. But definitely exciting to be part of the organization.
Thank you, and lovely to have you with us. Fergal, I wasn't aware of the history with PKF and the Lillian there. Are you both going to play nice? Is everything cordial?
We'll always be cordial. There's plenty of business for everyone.
Yes, indeed. Please give us a little introduction, sir.
Well, as you said, Fergal McCormick. I'm the managing partner of a firm called PKF FPM, and we have 5 offices across the island of Ireland, both in the Republic of Ireland and the north of Ireland, and obviously very active in PKF International. And I've just recently stepped down just over a year ago as president of Chartered Accountants Ireland.
Okay, and it is great to have you all with us today. Let's just talk about you for a moment. We're going to talk about the accounting profession, but I mentioned earlier how much you're being leaned into right now and how much you're standing in the gap between the accounting firms and everything that is going on. So, Reese, I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. And as a leader of leaders, there's no doubt you're under huge pressure right now. So I wanted to ask you, what's keeping you strong right now, or who or what is supporting you in your role supporting the global organization you represent?
Well, I mean, it is, I think there's no doubt it's a challenge. I think one of the things that we experienced almost immediately was the challenges of communication. Ensuring, it's one thing sending an email, it's one thing going to someone's desk to ask to get something done. It's a completely different thing when you are permanently looking at how you can improve communication so that it's effective, and I don't mean just sending another email. So there was one thing I think particularly which struck me, which was the need to be really good at communication. And that's about making sure you're articulating things in the right way in order to bring people along with you on the ideas. And when you can't describe it to them face to face so easily, there are a number of things there. But what keeps me awake is the fact that I still want us to grow. I'm still always looking to see how we can support our firms. And that's always a bit more of a challenge when you are that much more remote. But I think it's not insurmountable. And I have a very good team. The team we all have our responsibilities. We work together very closely. We're always in communication with each other. And I think just getting out there to those firms across our network is important. I would also say, I work very closely with the structures we have. So, we have a number of volunteer structures, and we have the board, of course, all very positive and very active in engaging across the network. So it's not I'm not meaning for that to be a plug. What I'm saying is I just think it's a very good way of making sure that one voice is replicated across many, and that helps to spread then across the diversity of all the countries we have.
Yeah, it's a good point. Lara, you'll be pulled thinly like everyone right now. What's keeping you strong, particularly mentally? Because there's a lot going on, isn't there?
Yeah, when this first occurred, I fought really hard because I thought, okay, this is not going to last long. I'm going to keep my normal routine in life. That just didn't work. I realized, okay, this is here to stay. We have to start thinking about creating a new routine, a new way of doing business, a new way of doing my life. So I did. I started a new routine, first couple of weeks sitting at home, working from home, where we have a robust office. We have an office of 26 people here in the Atlanta office. And then we have directors across the world. So to a point, we were used to working remote for some of us, and then some of us were just thrown into it. And a lot of our accounting firms were thrown into that as well. So I just started a new routine for myself, waking up at a certain time, getting dressed versus just staying in my pajamas. Didn't have to wear a suit and tie, but just, putting myself together a little bit more. One main thing I did do myself personally is stop watching the news. I felt like that was just a catalyst for me having to worry all the time, and you just don't know what to do, what to say, what to think, which is right, which is wrong. So I just stopped watching the news. Personally, I took up yoga. I know that sounds crazy, but it was a time for me to stop my mind. Because one of the things we rushed at is, okay, what do? We got to add value for our members. We got to be valuable. We have to show them that we're there for them. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, as an association, we might not be top of mind to a lot of our accounting firms. So we want to make sure that our values stayed present with our firms. And I was an avid workout junkie. I worked out 5 to 6 days a week at a gym. I haven't been at a gym since February. So I had to change that. So what I did is I convinced my trainer to start training me at home, but outside. And now he has about 122 people that he trains in different areas, but all outside in parking lots. And I've actually helped him build a business instead of doing what he used to do. So it's just, it's you don't waste a good crisis. You have to think about what you can do better. And, as a leader, first of all, you have to work on your mindset, your conditioning, and then once you're good, then you can bring that out to the others.
Yeah, it's very good. There's some excellent points there. You've got to look after yourself before you can look after the people. And I see Fergal nodding. Apart from the coffee, Fergal, what's kept you strong? Because you've had a firm to run, but you've also had an ambassadorial role with PKF International. So how have you stayed strong?
Well, I think a lot of the themes are common. I do think that, first of all, it's always we have to recognize that our current circumstances don't determine where we go. They merely determine where we start. And I've always held the view that basically the key to life is not what happens around you, but how you respond. And therefore, in that context, I think that I believe that we must have confidence in our team. We must recognize there's a changing market there. We must have agility. But at the end of the day, if we have confidence in our team and we make sure that we're the fittest and we're the best, both mentally and as ability-wise, then to be honest with you, we will survive. There will always be a need for us. It'll be a different need. It could well be, you know, a different image of where we're going. But at the end of the day, no matter what technology we bring, and digitalization is obviously fundamental, people will be centered to everything. So long as we continue to care about people, whether that be our staff or whether that be our clients, then I believe once the values are right, life will continue and it'll be worthwhile. So I've always held the view that I've never lost a wink's sleep. And I have no plan to do so. I give it my best every day. Sometimes I don't get it right. Sure, a lot of times I don't get it right, but it's not for lack of trying. And all we can do is do our best.
Fergal, just move your microphone a little bit closer because you're very softly spoken, so that's better. Brian, have you taken up yoga or what have you been doing? Because Fergal makes a great point, isn't it? Unless we look after ourselves, we've got to look after people, and that drains your batteries, doesn't it? So we have to stay strong.
Exactly. I think I have limited myself on the news too. I do watch BBC a little bit more, believe it or not. They're a little bit at the just you're not sure what news you're getting, you know. So I appreciate that, Laura. For me, it's really been fun to watch folks, especially our support team in Integra, support team in the offices of our members, just really to stand back and watch them execute. Never in a such a short period of time has there been such a sense of urgency about getting communication out to clients, to members. I think the communications folks have done a fabulous job. I think the pivot to working remotely is a lot more difficult than folks think. Sure, you have the equipment, but the technology people in these firms have been really fabulous in not only providing the equipment, but kind of working on the culture as you're working at home. That's going to be a challenge, I think. I think also with respect to the HR issues, how do you close an office? How do you reopen the office? I think that all of that, those mechanics have been handled by these support people that are firms sharing ideas, associations and networks that are sharing ideas together. So I think it's really less of about watching the CPAs. The CPAs kind of know what to do. They've been doing it. It's really these admin teams are coming together and really doing a fabulous job. That keeps me going.
Yeah. Just going back to Laura's point about not watching the news. You do hear a lot of professional athletes when they're taking part in Olympics or tournaments and things like that. They don't tune into the news because it just distracts you. But there is a balance to be struck, isn't there? Because we need to be informed, particularly as leaders of leaders. People look to us for answers and insights. So just to open that up to anyone that wants to add anything on there, how do you strike that balance between not getting wrapped up in the bad news, but also staying informed?
And I guess I should probably correct myself. I not that I stopped watching the news altogether. I just stopped watching the news continuously and the local news. And to Brian's point, I feel, and maybe this is the European speaking in me, because I'm actually originally from Italy, and I do have a lot of family in Italy, but I watch the BBC when I do watch the news, because I feel like that's the most, I want to say honest news, but neutral news, because it's not geared towards any political events or any kind of US-based information. It's more worldly.
Mm-hmm.
I think the news for quite a long time just focused on one issue, and became very trying to try and watch. And, you know, it turned me off watching it daily. But I think recently it's, of course, started to change, and there is a lot more international news, or a lot more news coming in about other subjects, which is important, because it's about the breadth of information being circulated. But, you know, for a good few months, it was just about the number of the expansion of the pandemic, and none of that was a real surprise. So therefore, the news wasn't particularly, I didn't think, particularly supportive of those sorts of things. But I think it has improved.
But it takes a lot to get Brexit off the agenda, because that was all of our news, Reece, wasn't it, over here? And then Trump and his impeachment proceedings, that was going on over there. So I don't know what was happening in Ireland, Fergal, but yeah, really good points. Any final thoughts on that before we move on?
Well, you can see things are changing, because Brexit's now back on the news agenda.
Okay.
Just an interesting point, going back to the comment before we go on to the news. We did experiment with an organization who provided fitness and Pilates and yoga, and what we did find was that actually it was a tremendous team lifting effect across all the offices, and that we were amazed we were surprised, by the way, by different people who did things we wouldn't have been expecting. But what it ultimately has meant is we've cancelled, actually.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of them weren't open, but we've now cancelled the gyms in the various 5 local areas, and we've actually gone with this online program, which they do 3 times a week: Pilates, yoga, and fitness, depending what people want. They can have anything, 3. But it's interesting in that it has been, I would say, a lifter of spirits among the team.
You're looking good for it, Fergal, as well. I can see you in the lycra and everything. So you've got the
Rob, never judge a book by its cover. That's one way thing. I need to tell you that. I've seen this frame about 2 months ago. You wouldn't recognize it now.
Bless you. I did hear from one accounting leader that said that one of the first challenges that accounting firms had with getting people working from home was bad backs, because they went to a working around the kitchen table or sitting on a bed, and they didn't have so they had to get all the chairs in there, the proper office chairs, to get the right posture. And it's things like that you don't think about with the pandemic, but it all cascades in, doesn't it? Okay, so let's talk about positioning. We hinted earlier how important a role accountants have to play. And Lara, I'll come to you first on this one. We talk about them as being trusted advisor. Some accounting firms have fallen short. Obviously, none of the lineal firms, because they're all amazing. We get that. But some of the firms have not quite stepped up as they could have done. But honestly, how well placed do you feel accountants are in the new world to help businesses and the economy generally to recover from what's happening?
So, you know, for years, I can recall that we've all been talking about, you know, the firm of the future for a while now, and the need for accountants to move into more of an advisory role. And this situation has really pushed many of our members, and I'm sure accountants across the world, into a faster way of doing business, more in the advisory role. No doubt, you know, the clients are turning to their accountants for this trusted business advice and the support. And I think it's been talked about how important it is for accountants to recognize this. But I think now it's been almost in the light. You know, in the US, we've had a lot of legislative changes. We've had the PPP loans. We've had government stimulus, and it's been very complex and convoluted for clients to understand how it works, how to set up for it. So they've certainly turned to their accountants, and their accountants have been able to given the opportunity to be the advisory role and to see how that actually works. Yes, you have that technical side, but these clients are turning to you to ask, how do I do this? Please advise me on how to get through this rigmarole. So they have started thinking themselves as, you know, the first line of defense. That's what I say accountants are for businesses. They are the first line of defense for a business, for their clients, to help survive this time. So at this time, I'm seeing a lot of our firms reaching out to their clients to help them in that aspect. Hey, let me help you keep your business open and running. Here's the advice I have. And I'm a former business owner myself. At one point, I had 11 Subway franchises.
Wow.
And this was a while ago, so I'm dating myself now. But back, 20 years ago, I would have loved for my accountant to give me more advice other than here's your financials, here's what you did, here's your profit and loss. It would have been nice for him to say, hey, here's what I think you could do. Here's how I think you could take this. I never got that back then. So today, if I had that same accountant, I would be in a different position for sure. So yeah, being the first line of defense, I think, for businesses is the accountant's mindset today.
Yeah, that's really good. And Reese Maddock, we know that the downward pressure on compliance fees have meant that accountants for some years now have been trying to push advisory, but it's not really been taken on by clients. But now clients, as Lara hints, are crying out for that advice in this complex and uncertain world, trying to make sense of things. So how are these caped crusaders and CPAs and accountants coping with their trusted advisor status, do you think?
Well, I think that's right. And I think Lara touched on a really good point as well, which is, so many new ways of operating, so many new ways that a firm, a client can access support are sprung on clients and very, very quickly. And you're right, there's an element of uncertainty in terms of how to get the information that's out there, what to do with it once you do get it. And I think that accountancy firms are very, very well placed. Those accountancy firms that are on top of the information coming out. The ICAW was a hugely popular resource of information during the UK's furlough.
Just for our foreign friends, Reese, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England, Ireland, England, Wales, yes.
Yes, yeah. And during the introduction of furlough activities at the start of the pandemic, many clients were looking out at how do we access this? What does it mean for us? How do we control it once it's in our firms? And how do we record it? So I think those sorts of activities are very well supported by accounting firms who can then also support on looking at not just new services, but what is it that a client now needs? And it isn't always about, again, as we mentioned earlier, it's not always about the existing services that are provided to a client, the audit, the tax, whatever, but it could be something around new services to help them through this process while they're in the mindset of managing cash flow, while they're in the mindset of just getting the best from staff, how to manage staff remotely. Those sorts of things are all really important aspects that an accountant can help with. Yeah.
Brian, you mentioned earlier that the CPAs largely know what they're doing. I'm sure you're right, but they are the superheroes. Whatever businesses are going through right now, whether it's tough times, cash flow, as Reese mentions, potential insolvency, or opportunities, innovation, the accountant is presumably the answer to those, right?
Yes, I agree with that. I think it has been exciting to see all of this happen during tax season. So it was really, a real quick, again, move to just tell clients, look, your compliance work is going on the back burner, right? It's all about survival. It's all about keeping the business going, working weekends and, counseling business owners who are in a panic over, layoffs, furlough. Do you keep people on the payroll? What do you do with cash flow? What's the strategy? What is everyone else doing? And what are the implications of that? So it was really interesting. Some of the older folks that have been through that before, but it was exciting for me to see some of a real good opportunity for the younger CPAs, really, that have never been through this, to understand and get a broader look at the issues and putting themselves in the shoes of the business owner, because a lot of them weren't sleeping good at night. And I think it was great training. It was great. I think most firms did a great job with clear guidance, clear communication, and I think it provided a great opportunity for the profession as a whole, and it will continue. I think that the consulting work will still continue. M&A is going to trail off for a little bit, but it'll rebound and continue to help benefit the profession.
Yeah, and Fergal, the complexities that businesses are facing now, are nothing like what they were a few months ago. So in this new world, how well placed do you feel accountants are to help bridge the gap?
I think they're very well placed. I think, to be fair, what has happened is that there were a number of trends which were evolving and had been evolving for a number of years. But I think the acceleration of the pace has been very dramatic
Yeah,
in the
Lara
last
pointed
12
that
months.
out, I think, as
I
well.
mean,
The accountants are getting things done more quickly now than they
yeah,
would have done in 2 or 3 years.
yeah, correct. And not only that, but more importantly, no matter what they're doing for their clients is moving at a pace which wasn't at the same pace before. And I mean, let's be fair, cloud accounting was well in, but it's now moving with a pace. You're now getting to a stage where real-time accounting virtually is now going to be a prerequisite. You're getting to a place where, to be honest with you, data and big data is going to be the area for accountants to get into. I think, whenever we talk about even the whole area of trusted advisor, I mean, it's very simple. If you are the most trusted advisor, you'll be in the room virtually when the decision is being made. If you're getting a phone call after the decision is being made, well, you're only bluffing yourself. You're not the most trusted advisor. And I think that those challenges coming along have and will be good for accountancy, because I think it will move us to the stage where, if the truth was told, I think we were definitely moving, but it has given us a pace and acceleration that we've now just got to get on it. I think you're going to see digitalization, which was being embraced, but it's going to be embraced a lot faster. I think you're certainly going to see the whole area of big data becoming significantly more important within accountancy firms. And I think that's good, because really, if you think about it in terms of motivating our staff and our people, isn't it far more exciting to be adding value, to be interpreting? I mean, yeah, the processes, we'll oversee them, but we can use IA or whatever to do the processes. But ultimately, thankfully, it requires people's judgment, and the differentiating factor will ultimately be judgment.
Thank you. Any final points you want to add there? Just a moment to mention something you didn't mention before. Lara, I saw you were nodding just then, and Reese, you were nodding too.
Well, I was agreeing with the points that I heard. When we're talking about these situations, there is so much that is at stake. There's so many different avenues you can think of. So I was just agreeing, like, yes, I've heard about that point, the cash flow issues. I've heard about that. So yeah, it's I think the most important part for us, and I know you're going to be asking about us being relevant, is to make sure that we're there for our members and help them through, by understanding that, what we've been speaking about, being an advisory role, helping your clients understand what they need to do to stay in business. That's what our role is now.
Yeah. And coming on to that, Brian, let's start with you on this one. Why do accounting firms at a time like this need to plug into a network, an alliance, an association, and how do you stay relevant and support them for that?
Yeah, I really have a hard time grasping how a firm could survive without a network. And really, I'm sure everyone on this call can agree. I mean, there's so many resources just to be able to pick up the phone and call other members, or call the association. Just what is everyone else doing? And it's to get out of the bubble. So I think that this whole pandemic has really pushed, I think, the virtual interaction to our members. And we've seen a dramatic increase in the number of just even spur of the moment Zoom calls. Let's get a few people on on a call and talk about that topic. So I think it's really, you can learn from, these situations and create opportunities. So I think that, what we're staying relevant is we are increasing the number of virtual meetings, the seminars, the webinars, and getting more attendance, I think, because it is a little bit more efficient than hopping on a plane for a big conference. And I think that, there's a little bit of I think all organizations are moving in that direction. I think that, it is a little bit of a challenge, and everyone's looking forward to the face-to-face conferences to see people again, right? I mean, I was excited last night watching the news, and they're talking about the Olympics next year. Well, I mean, that's so cool. It's good to see people, hoping to get together. And, I know that's what all of the networks and associations, that's a real value. So it's, challenges getting through this and making the content in these virtual programs meaningful, making them relevant, and you don't want to see people not off to sleep on the Zoom calls. You want to see, this excitement as if you were all together. So
Yeah.
I think everyone's, and I think this is, the whole virtual experience is not just with respect to our profession. It's just the way the businesses are moving.
Yeah. And Fergal, Brian brings up a good point. I have noticed on these panels that I've been doing, like I said, the 20th now, that leaders like yourselves are reporting that engagement is up. People that wouldn't necessarily come to a face-to-face global or regional conference will show up to the Zoom calls. So they are pressing in. But he makes a good point that he can't see how an accounting firm would not be part of any kind of network, because it's not a time to be isolated, is it?
Well, without doubt, and to be fair, the one thing that the current environment has got across to us is the importance of connecting. And, any firm that has aspirations to grow, to be fair, it has to be part of a network or an association. And the reason is very simple. Look, our clients are doing business all around the world now. They want somehow to find out what's happening in Brazil, or what's happening in America, or what's happening in Georgia. I mean, if you can say, I'll make a phone call now and check it out for you. That's what creates business. So, I can't imagine how anyone could actually go forward as a global firm in their own right today without being part of a network or an association. I compare to whenever you go to book an hotel. I mean, quite often you say, do they have a leisure center? Now, you may not actually ever use a leisure center, but you want to know that they have a leisure center. Similarly, I believe that if you have an aspiring growth client, I think if you don't have an international network, they won't be with you. That's the reality. Where are you going to be in 5 years with that client? If that client has ambitions to grow and grow in servicing around the world, you can't service them.
Yeah. But Reese, we talked about relevance here. If you are not offering face-to-face conferences and networking opportunities to your client, they are naturally saying, well, where is the value in being a member of UHY International? Where is the relevance coming from? So what are you doing to support your member firms?
Well, I think, in common with many other on the call here, this is about, if you have an international aspect, if you have those aspirations to do more work cross-border, you need to be able to have the support or the access to the information and knowledge. I think networks and associations are about knowledge sharing. I think they are about having go-to people, understanding the centers of excellence across the network to be able to support. So I think there's a large proportion of support, which is something that's come, I think, to the fore more recently, of course, through this pandemic. When we started out at the initial aspects in March, April time, when the pandemic was really starting to take a hold of many of the countries across the world, there's a very strong sense of we're in this together. It's a commonly used phrase, but it's a very, very strong sense of we've got to support each other, and how can we support each other? So we ran a periodic series of regional online sessions just around surviving coronavirus, surviving the issues. How do we support our own firms in our network, but also then how do we translate that to supporting our clients? And that's the most important aspect. When we take a stand back, we've still got to be able to support our clients. Mm-hmm. So I think that aspect of the importance of knowledge sharing, the importance of mutual support across a cohesive network, I think was very, very important at the time.
Yeah.
And I also saw, it is a good point as well, I've seen a huge uptake in engagement across the network. One of the hardest things is to penetrate through all the different layers of different firms to get the information across, to get knowledge across, and to engage with different numbers of staff. And we've all got quite a lot of staff in our groups. How to get to those staff with the different levels of knowledge and information is always a challenge. But I have seen a huge take-up of participation on things like Zoom calls, because it's more straightforward. It's slightly easier than having to travel anywhere, of course. So that sort of engagement, I think, will continue. on the back of and irrespective of face-to-face meetings, which undoubtedly and hopefully will return.
We've just lost Laura for a moment. I don't know what's happened there. She may drop back in, but Fergal was hinting at that people are curious, aren't they? Members are curious about what are other firms doing? What are other countries doing? And even you are here thinking, what are other networks and associations doing? And we know that best practice of yesterday is not necessarily best practice today because we're in new times, but there is that hunger for how are people going about this? Because nothing's certain and there's no one right way to do it, is there?
Well, there's definitely no right way to do it. But I do think it is about taking every opportunity to support firms and support the offices. That's a challenge in itself. But, you know, through combined use of all the facilities you can get now, the online engagements, the Zoom calls, whatever it might be, I think that really plays us to the strength of having a good, cohesive network.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if we can bring Laura in. She's coming in right now. So we just missed her answer to that question. So we'll give her just a second. Lara, we thought you'd gone off to do a little bit of yoga there or just grab a quick coffee. So
Sorry about that, guys. I just my internet connection dropped out. So
the joys of technology.
I just couldn't be connected properly anymore.
That's okay. Well, listen, Lara, let's just give you a moment to answer that last question about how you're staying relevant to your firms and how you're adding value and supporting them in these critical times.
You know, funny, one of the main things that our members say that we do the best at Alineo is the networking and the connectivity. Well, you know.
You would say that, though, because you're in international relations, aren't you? And that's kind of your role, so.
Yes. But the funny thing is, with this pandemic, that really just went pear-shaped. You know, all of our meetings were put on hold. Everything was done virtually. It was just a totally different feel. We're a support system. You know, we always see a great deal of collaboration between our members and supporting each other, members supporting each other, sharing resources, sharing ideas, sharing best practices has always been what Alineo is about. And I echo everyone else. I don't know how a firm survives not being a member of some type of association or network. I think that's a must for any accounting firm that wants to be successful today and in the future. So we recognized really quickly that we needed to add value to our membership. We needed to be relevant to our members. So we started facilitating sharing of resources, best practices, ideas by launching what was called the Global Working Group concepts. And so we created these global working groups across the different regions in their time zones, specific to their organizations, their clients, their members in their regions and sub-regions. And they met at first once a week. It was facilitated either by a member or an outside facilitator, where they met together, they had Zoom calls, they talked about what their pain points were. A lot of those matched some of the other members' pain points, what they did about them, how they were resolving issues, how they were resolving their clients' crises. And it worked really well to get the members together talking through a global working group, through the Alineo Global Network. And that we felt like helped us stay ahead of the game, in front of our members, creating that relevance, creating that value. The global working groups now meet still. They're not meeting once a week anymore to avert crisis, but they're meeting once a month. Some are meeting quarterly, but it's still something where they built cohesion. They relied on each other to help each other, share best practices, what works well, what didn't, and keep themselves going. So that was the main thing we instituted probably within a week of, realizing, okay, we're working from home. We've got to change this up. We've got to create some value here. Yeah. So our members are really excited about us creating these global working groups.
I need to award you 2 extra double bonus points for mentioning the word rigmarole earlier. It's one of my favorite words and I don't often hear it. So well done on that one. Okay. This is terrific, everyone. We're going to go into the last question now, and I'm going to ask you to get your crystal balls out. And Fergal, I'll start with you on this one. You've been in this game a while. You've seen recessions, tough times come and go. We do know that loans that have been taken out are going to become payable. We know that tax bills that have been deferred They're going to become payable down the line. We're in for a tough time. And people say 2021 might even be more difficult than 2020. The vaccine's not coming around anytime soon. We're social distancing for a while. So what do you see coming up for the accounting profession over the next 6-12 months?
Well, I think for the accountancy profession, there's a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And I think we often say we're the trusted advisor, but as I said earlier on, really the key here is connectivity. And it's connectivity both within our networks, but also more importantly with our clients. And I think, to be honest with you, what has happened is, and you know, maybe it should have happened far more regularly, but I actually believe we've been in contact with our clients far more over the last 12 weeks than we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that is a number of reasons has caused that. I think that within our workforces, there is a bit of urgency. There's a bit of warrior there now. Maybe there was a little bit of complacency where somebody else would get the business. Well, now they got to get the business. They've got to say, what am I doing?
Mm-hmm.
What am I doing to make sure my job's secure? And what am I doing, more importantly, to help my clients to make sure they're secure? So I do believe that personal contact, but it'll be virtual personal contact. So I think the level of connectivity, regular contact with clients will be key. And, you know, I think it won't necessarily be ringing the client for business. It'll be ringing the client to see how you're getting on, how are things. But in the course of that conversation, when the motivation is not to sell, but the motivation is to help. But given the skill base within most accountancy practice of reasonable size, they will be able ultimately to identify areas where they can help and bring solutions and benefits to the client.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the opportunities are. I agree with some of the comments made earlier on. I think the compliance work will continue. I think you won't see that collapse, but the difference will be that the differentiator will not be the compliance work. The differentiator will be, does your client think, irrespective of accountancy, are you the first or the second person they're ringing? Mm-hmm. Are you the person that they believe, even though it doesn't say on the script, you know the answer, but they believe you listen to them?
Yeah.
And I think that's really a listening ear. It's going to be very, very important. And my experience, and I'm not just talking about our own firm, I'm talking about other firms as well. My experience are that actually client relationships are getting stronger. Client relationships are getting stronger.
It's a great point. And I'm just holding up Exhibit A, which is the book what I wrote, but Build Your Reputation. And Brian, this is, I'm saying to accountants right now, be the person that they remember when the dust settles and the fires go out and the smoke clears. And that is about connectivity, as Fergal's saying, isn't it? And that's why he's so optimistic about the future. If accountants can position themselves right, do you feel equally positive about the next 12 months or so?
I do. I really think people have to remember that this is a short-term situation. I mean, really, and don't make short-term decisions based in a short-term environment. I really think that in addition to the communication, which we always put, I think, really front and center, is compassion, right? And I think that we don't know what our clients are going through necessarily. We don't know what our employees are going through necessarily. I think sometimes as accountants, we're really focused on metrics, numbers, productivity. And I tell everybody, everybody's going through this. Again, we're all in this together, right? Productivity is going to go down. Yeah. Don't lose sight of compassion. And I think the firms that win, we're always going to be in a talent war, are going to be the firms that find, you know, the balance between productivity and compassion. I mean, we don't know what we're finding more, I think, about even in our firm, about what people do when they're at home, what type of things hold them back from getting to the next level. Mm-hmm. I think it's not just in our profession, it's in our clients' businesses. So yeah. I think it's a real opportunity to really take a deep dive and on the personal level, you know, to really look at the ways we can create opportunity and keep your culture and not lose sight of that in the decline of productivity.
Yeah, and Lara, it's great to hear Brian talk about compassion there. I delivered a webinar recently for an accounting network called Exemplary Leadership in Tough Times, and I talked about how accountants are having to make very commercial decisions in very emotional circumstances. There's a lot of people hurting out there, and and they do have to be that counsel and everything else. So there's some tough times coming up for them, but if they can be compassionate and empathetic, the future must be positive in some way, despite the dark times, right?
Absolutely. You know, the phrase that I've learned, and I've used it already, is don't waste a good crisis. And I know you probably have heard that before in other places. You know, talking to our member firms right now, many of them are saying, yeah, everything's great. You know, we haven't seen anything change. You know, clients are still doing great. Everything's going well. So I think in a lot of ways, it's a little bit too soon to see what's coming.
Yeah.
So, you know, the advice that we've heard our members give each other and that we're giving our members is take this opportunity to look at your firm and the operations of your firm. This has changed how you're going to operate in the future, probably, if not forever, how you're going to operate. So look at what you can do to cut costs or change the way you operate so that you are ready for what's coming. And we want to refer to them as resilient companies. They're the ones that are going to make it through, because I believe that we still have yet to see the tougher times for accounting firms. I think that's coming. So they need to start looking at that now and thinking about making the changes necessary that they need now to be able to adapt to what's coming in the future.
Yeah.
So for now, everything is great for all of our firms, but you know, we all know that something is coming. This is gonna affect their bottom line at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So make those changes now. Look at what you can do now to make yourself more resilient for that future that's coming.
Yeah, it's very good. I love that word, resilient. It's so appropriate. Reese, how's your crystal ball? Is it telling you what's coming up? And if so, what are next week's winning lottery numbers? What's coming up for the next few
Let me get my pen.
Not really uncommon thoughts from the rest of the group here. I think that I've seen an increase in the amount of communication with clients. I think that, and it's not just about the latest service we can offer or the latest activities that we're just following up on. I think it's about that being closest to the client, and those closest to the client win. And I think it's about understanding the issues the client faces, which are different now than they were 6 months ago. So I think that activity has been quite strong on the increase from the firms that I've been talking to. But I would also say that the initial panic that was there, that there was going to be a huge impact. I think there is a huge impact globally, and I think there are always going to be there's always going to be some changes, but I don't think it's been half as bad necessarily as was first anticipated. That's a very general statement, because there are always going to be areas that are more challenging than others.
Yeah, and some countries are having more problems than others, aren't they, as well? We're all international.
Absolutely. From an international perspective, some countries have suffered a lot more than others. So they have their own challenges, and that is itself very interesting to observe. But I also think, as Lara said, the challenges are there to come. And I think, as clients, as we start to see much more impact in terms of trade and the global economic situation, challenges that's starting to come out now as the figures are being reported from the first 6 months, and then of course we start to look ahead. I don't think that's going to ease up in the short term, and next year I think will be equally as challenging, if not slightly more challenging.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to ask you all for some closing remarks, just 30 seconds or so, in terms of what advice you would give to the leaders of accounting firms watching this, because I've heard it said that this is going to be a reset, not a reboot. And by that, I mean that a reboot is you turn your computer off, you turn it back on, and everything's the same as it was. But this is not going to happen here. This is a reset. You turn your computer off, you turn it on, and things are going to look very different in the next 6, 12, 24 months. So, Brian, if I can just start with you, any words of advice or encouragement you would give to the leaders of accounting firms watching to help them navigate the murky waters of what's coming up?
I would say it's a time to think creatively, and I use this with a lot of my business clients that, think of, have a vision of the company that could take you out, what that would look like, if someone would come into your market and take your clients and steamroll your business, what would they look like? And become that company, right? So do those things as a CPA firm, whether it's a CPA firm or a grocery store or a baseball team. I mean, that's really a time to think creatively, to reset. And I think Laura said, take a look at new processes, new procedures, and things like that. So I think it's a really good time to not only push your ideas, but solicit other ideas from your team.
Yeah. If we're not going to change now, then when are we going to change? Fergal, what would you say? Just a few seconds, closing remarks. Any words of inspiration to the accounting leaders watching?
Well, I think we've covered some of the key points that must be the core of everything. Empathy, compassion. I also think, to be fair, the talent management. I've come to the firm conclusion that if you have the right talent, whatever happens, you'll be able to survive. But more than survive, you'll go to the top. So I think the key here will be to have the agility and the resilience to respond, but more importantly, to the confidence that within your team, whatever the challenges, you'll overcome them. But that requires a culture and a mentality that says we're not afraid of the future. We will move with it. We'll try and keep ahead of it. We won't necessarily be in a position to forecast it because nobody knows what's going to happen, certainly. But what we do know is that people will be at the center of it. And if we can get the right talent and competencies, well, then we'll be there. And we'll be there about it.
Love that. Reese knows what's going to happen, obviously, so we'll come to him next, and then we'll finish with Lara. But final words of advice from you, Reese, to the accounting leaders watching to get through what's coming up.
I think that the word that's used a lot, but I don't think overused, is resilience. I think as long as we understand that actually adaptability, creativity, as Brian was saying, and we've always prided ourselves as a professional services environment in being strong on the people side. It is a people industry. It's about the relationships you build and the way in which those are serviced, and never more so now than in the times we are looking at currently and looking ahead. It's our people who will get us through this. And you're right. I think that the talent management of that activity is ever so important during this period now.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Lara, last words from you. I'm hearing words like creativity and agility and adaptability. They're not words we usually associate with accountants, are they? But if there's ever a time for it, it's right now, isn't it?
Yes, and I agree with Brian, Reese, and Fergal. Everything they said is right on the money. Yes, we've been talking about creativity, adaptability for the accounting firms for the future. It's been a very difficult road to get them to understand that. I think they've been slammed into it now. Your people, very important. It's very important to have the right people in the right positions to train them, to make sure that they have the right tools and resources available so that they can do their jobs. Recognize those rainmakers in your firm, those star performers, and make sure that they have the ability to push it forward. Develop new ideas. Look at the way your clients are responding to you. Figure out ways that make it easier for you to interact with your clients, but on their level. We just need to change it up. We need to brighten it up. We need to freshen it up. And not only just accounting firms, but also associations. We've been talking about this for a while. How do we change? How do we make the leap? Because we've been doing the same things forever. It's time. And I think this pandemic has really opened up everyone's eyes to say, okay, guys, it's time. We need to figure out fresh ideas, fresh ways, and really hone in on the things that are important. And that's what makes the firm tick, and that's what's going to make your clients stay.
Well, that's a wonderful place to finish, because you, associations and networks, you have a critical role to play in serving the accounting firms that will in turn serve the businesses out there that are going to get this economy and this growth back on track. So I want to finish by thanking you all so much for your insights, for your energy and inspiration here. And thanks so much for rocking up and sharing really valuable stuff that's going to help out there, because we don't have all the answers, but we're willing to put in a few suggestions here to help these accounting leaders get through it. Thank you all so much for participating. I'm going to stop the record button now as you all just give a little wave and a thank you. I'll keep the Zoom room open for a few moments, but You probably busy people as you are, you have a Zoom call to go to in a couple of minutes because that's the nature of things. But as I stop the record, thank you all so much.